Welcome to In the Light with me, Anna Isabel. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, and my guest today is the author of A Visionary Guide to Lucid Dreaming. It's Lee Adams. Lee, welcome to In the Light.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's something that's always fascinated me, the idea of lucid dreaming. So I guess the first question I would ask you is exactly what is lucid dreaming? What's the difference between a lucid dream and a, shall we say, normal dream?
Um, well, a lot of people define lucid dreaming in different ways. I like to keep it simple. And as my Buddhist teacher told me, he said, keep it simple, stupid. And I've always used that throughout my life since. Um, I'm very stupid sometimes, so it applies. But anyways, lucid dreaming to me is the essentially bringing awareness into the dream space. So if you have any sense of awareness, self-awareness that you're possibly dreaming, then I consider that a lucid dream. And so if you're in a dream and you realize this is a dream, then you're lucid dreaming. And there's varying degrees of that. And people describe, say, out-of-body experiences or astral projections in with some type of awareness, usually. And I would consider those as being lucid dreams as well. And that goes to the basic definition of what lucid dreams are, by the definition itself is having some form of awareness while dreaming. So, yeah.
Yes, it's I guess one of the reasons why I've always been interested in this concept is because I I would say at some point in a dream, at least 75% of the time, I become aware that I'm dreaming.
Hmm.
And then what has started to happen in the last few years is that I actually start interpreting the dream whilst I'm dreaming.
Wow.
And I think, oh wow, this is so cool. I know what this means. And I have to remember it when I wake
Hmm.
up. Sadly, I often remember that I had some great insight in the night, but can't remember what it was. So it's very frustrating. But I clearly, I mean, this is lucid dreaming because I'm actually now interpreting the dream as I'm dreaming it.
Hmm.
Um, so I just need to find a way of remembering it. That doesn't mean that in the middle of the night and wake everybody up because I'm wake my partner up because I'm writing it down.
Yeah, well, I I don't have that ability. That's a very strong ability to be able to go into a dream and actually kind of interpret the symbols and things like that that are happening as they're occurring in a dream. That's a level of awareness that I typically don't have. I'd probably naturally have maybe 1 to 2 lucid dreams a month if I'm lucky. That's without any type of practice whatsoever. If I'm practicing, I probably have around 5 to 7 a month or so. Maybe as much as like 10 if I'm lucky. I'm really going at it. But it's kind of like a muscle, for me. If I don't practice it, it will eventually kind of start deteriorating and go away. But most my dreams that are lucid, I look at things from kind of a scientific perspective instead of trying to interpret it symbolically like you're doing. It sounds like I'm like, oh, what are these people doing? Who are these dream characters? What do they have to say? And then testing them on their awareness level too. So I'd spend a lot of time asking them, like, are you dreaming? And ask them that, and they'd be like, no. Some would say no, and some would say yes. And then I'd be like, well, what would you say if I was dreaming right now? Like, am I dreaming you or are you dreaming me? And they'd be like, well, I'm dreaming you, of course. And I'd be like, well, I think I'm dreaming you, and kind of just playing that devil's advocate, in my dream space to figure out, hey, what is going actually on here? And so it's an interesting game with the characters, but I think it's a lot healthier to be in the frame that you're in, where you're like, okay, what does this mean? What is the meaning in here versus like, oh, are they, trying to trick them up, Um, because if you really take a objective look at like how dreams are created, right? You're entering their essentially the world of dreams when you're dreaming. And so it's kind of high, it has a head start on you all the time in a way. So the dream world is always created around you. So any decision that you make in a dream space, there's an argument that essentially even having awareness itself in a dream space is actually a dream. So it's actually implanted in you in a sense. It's fabricated that you have any awareness at all in a dream space. And that's actually part of the dream, the level of awareness that you have. So in me going into my dream and saying, oh, I'm aware now, but my dream characters aren't. It's actually in a way degrading them, and the dream itself is actually playing a role of the degraded dream character when it actually is pure awareness. It's hyper aware, and it's kind of teaching me a lesson, in a sense. It's like, oh, you think we're not aware and you're aware, but really it's the opposite. I'm actually unaware that it's aware and that it's actually me. So,
It sounds like we're taking two very different approaches,
mhm,
because it sounds like what you're doing is you are entering into a dialogue as to whether or not you're dreaming,
mhm,
and what's real and what's not real. I am saying I'm already in a dream. What does it mean?
right. Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
like it's a different, we're coming at it from different angles, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems, yeah, and you're right. Just you saying that kind of brings me into there and says like, well, I think you're right in the sense that it's giving us two different it's giving us what we need, essentially the medicine. My medicine is, hey Lee, like it's all a dream, dude. Don't you realize? Even your awareness is a dream. Nothing is really unaware. So your testing is just never ending. You're never going to get there. And then the other, maybe for you, it's like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And you're like trying to find meaning in certain things. And the reality is that it's all actually meaning, and that there's no such thing as non-meaning. And and that maybe is the lesson. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's definitely
Oh,
very different.
it is. It's funny because I take it as a given that there's a meaning.
Mhm.
I just need to understand what it is. And it seems that I've started to work it out in the I'd say the last couple of years. I've started to work out whilst I'm actually in the dream. um, so it's really interesting, and but what we're both doing is we're both saying there's some really good insight happening in our sleep.
Oh, definitely.
These,
Yeah.
these, this is important, what goes on in our sleep.
Yes. I mean, I'm way beyond thinking that dreams are just meaningless random information. Like I'm not even interested in debating somebody on that. It's a complete waste of my time. So if somebody says, "Well, aren't dreams meaningless?" I just I'm I can't help you right now, like I'm just gonna walk away probably, and be like, "Oh, well, I wrote a book for you if you really want to explore a different perspective. Otherwise, you figure it out." Unfortunately. So if anybody thinks that their dreams are just completely meaningless, I think that they have a lot to learn about themselves in the world, because the world and science, real science, is exploring these topics with much more open-mindedness, less materialism, when it comes to reality. Essentially, the materialist concept of reality is dying at an astronomical rate, and so it won't last very much longer. And with any change, there's going to be some problems with that. But I think we're moving into a different frame of understanding of what's actually happening in even our waking lives. So, and dreams are kind of the bridge between that. Um, people are paying more attention to their dreams. You can see it in the media, in the news, things like that. Lucid dreaming is becoming more and more popular because people are bringing more awareness into their life, as they reflect on things. So of course, awareness of dreams is going to improve as well. And in that, we'll start reconnecting to who we actually are. And society and cultures will change because of that too. So some good and some bad, but that's just the process.
I can't let the phrase real science slip away without explanation. So
Yeah,
I think that's really, really important. Would you care to elaborate?
sure. I mean, I believe, and I believe in definitions and words. Words are important, and you can't just change a definition or an idea without providing some type of explanation. So the scientific method, I think, is something that has really made us who we are today as a world, really connected everyone together, made everything that we essentially use today, like technology and airplanes and all that stuff. So it's very important to me. But so the real science is essentially objectively looking at evidence and supporting your claims, and retesting to see if it works. And that's real science to me. But then on top of that becomes all the dogma of culture and institutions and things like that. So anybody that's really gone down the road of academia can attest that um, certain sources, of information are accepted and some aren't. And if you oppose that, even in the most liberal disciplines, it's still there. Essentially, if you oppose that with other evidence from a source that isn't supported by that community, they will tell you no, stay away from it. It's not useful. So, like in my school, which is it's a Jungian based school, they're really hyper interested in dreams. Dreams are pretty much it. But when it comes to lucid dreams, then it's like, no, 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 you don't touch lucid dreams because that's controlling dreams. And I I'm like, I've written books on a book on the subject. I know what I'm talking about, and that's not lucid dreams. Lucid dreams is awareness, not control. That's something else. That's you bringing something else into it. And they just don't listen. They're not interested because it doesn't fit the frame of their mode of exploration into the dream content. Dream content to them is essentially unconscious. And then once you wake up, then you can engage with it and understand what it is. But there's a huge disconnect between what is reality, and what is real, and what is a dream, and what is the meaning in dreams, and how can you engage with dreams consciously, what is consciousness? Those are all disconnects essentially with that idea. So it's not objective anymore. It's become a dogma, and you can apply that to any academic education. Essentially, if you come out with a PhD, you're no longer really looking at the larger picture. You've kind of narrowed your view into a specific way, and you can try, without going insane, to keep an open mind. But some people are successful and some people aren't. And
And
yeah,
I guess, really what we're saying is that within science, there are scientists who have become very dogmatic.
yes, science isn't dogmatic. That's
Yeah,
a religion.
exactly. It should not be dogmatic. So what we are seeing is a very influential branch of science that's become very dogmatic about what what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, even though it flies in the face of not just experience, but in many cases evidence. So it's it's shutting off the ability to question beyond what we already know, whereas science has traditionally been, okay, well, this is what we already know, but what if?
Hmm.
And let's explore the what if. What's happened is that the what if is being has been shut down more and more.
Hmm.
And so this is why I when you said real science, I could not let that go, because this is an issue within the scientific community, and where
Yes.
where scientists are opening and more open and questioning and wanting to study, tricky things like consciousness, etc. Wasn't it for a time? I don't know if it still is. Consciousness was known as the C word.
Mm.
Um, you know, so it's very important that we make that distinction, because there is we need to know that not all science is the same, and
Right.
that's
Yeah.
particularly important when we're looking at something like dreams.
Yeah. Then it's actually in the guise of being science, but it's actually not science anymore. When you start limiting the ability to question things and look at it objectively, when there's evidence, repeated evidence of something, then you're no longer science. So, and religion is the same way. Religion to me is a science. Um, if anybody understands the meaning behind, say, yoga, right? Yoga means to yoke together. It doesn't mean like stretching or chanting or anything like that. Those are modes of exploring ways to yoke together. So there's infinite amount of yogas, depending on what method a person uses. They can create their own yoga. That's what they did. But there's dominant yogas, in India, and we have yoga in Western culture too now, but it's not the same as Indian yoga. So it's very different. So that it's yoga is just a kind of a catch term for all these things. Religion is the same thing. There's infinite amount of religions. There's dominant religions, but religion it essentially means the same thing, to bring together. And so you can have your own religion. You can make it whatever method works for you, but it turns into something else when you're no longer allowing a person to explore a method to bring together. So it's no longer religion. It's actually anti-religion. So a lot of religions today limit how people explore these methods. They limit what you can do and what you can't do based on the dogma of the religion. And in a sense, it's no longer religion. It's actually anti-religion in that sense. So a lot of science today is actually anti-science. Science, it's become dogmatic. It's anti-science. It's something else. So
And so it's, again, this is in a sense we've come off the topic of dreams, but it's so important because it's about the ability to explore.
right.
And here and that's what dreams are. It's the ability to explore,
Mhm.
explore the inner self, the inner landscape, the means by which we understand the world. So I think the question, I guess the next question I have for you is this. What would you recommend for someone who wants to begin to develop the ability to lucid dream?
Um, well, I would encourage them to reflect on their sleep behaviors to make sure that they're getting the correct amount of sleep, so that they can approach it with a healthy mindset. Because if you're constantly messing up your sleep cycles, and you're really messing with these naturally occurring patterns that your body has, like your circadian rhythms, things like that, then it could cause a lot of damage. So, the healthy thing is to make sure that you're getting accurate amount of sleep, and, food and things like that. Take care of the basic things before you really dive down in and try to figure out who you are. Um, and then uh, I think the lucid dream approach is a very good starter, actually, because it allows you to kind of bring in that awareness into that dream space, so you can take a different approach to seeing who you are and seeing the images and symbols in your dream in a different way, communicate to them. So I think of it as kind of traveling to another country, and what do people do when they travel to another country and they want to actually engage with that culture? So imagine your dreams as another country and another culture. They use a language that you don't really understand, right? But somewhat you can understand pictures, somewhat, right? We all dream. So say I was going to Japan and I spoke, essentially no Japanese, but I can see pictures, I'm like, okay. So I sit down and in a restaurant and I want to order some food. What do I do? Well, if they have a menu, I point to the picture of the food that I want. And then the hostess or whatever is like, oh, okay, they may say some Japanese or something like that, and then they go get my food and they bring it back. Well, we communicated and visually, right, in some format. It worked. But that's one level, right? That doesn't really tell me who my hostess is or anything like that. It doesn't tell me anything about the culture besides maybe the food, things like that. So if I want to really engage, then I start learning more about the symbols. I start learning about the language, start communicating more, asking questions. Eventually I get to a point where if we can communicate, and then I can learn about the culture, and actually really start getting in there and actually being part. It will start change me. It'll actually change me physically based on the food I eat, how I communicate, what I think, how I dream. Even the language may change in my dreams. So you know it starts building on itself in that way. So dreams are the same way, for us, Westerners, especially people and now pretty much the entire world, where symbolic language is completely disregarded. And so we have to start at the basics, essentially point out a picture and be like, this is what I think this picture is. What do you think it is? And a great way of doing that is become lucid. So you have a voice in your dream and you can talk to a dream character and say, oh, like, teach me this, like, what does this symbol mean to you? What are you trying to tell me? And um, and so in a lucid state, you're meeting the dream halfway and the dream's meeting you. If we just go into the dream and then we kind of bring out the information into the waking world and then we try to analyze it, I think that's good. It's a great start, but it also makes communication even that much harder, because you're trying to learn somebody's language without them giving you feedback. So it's kind of like going to Japan, getting the menu and then taking it home and then try to order your food. It's not as easy. So it's always easier when you're in the culture to learn about them.
On the other hand, though, I think it might be true to say that just becoming more aware of your dreams as holding some meaning,
Mhm.
and maybe starting a dream journal, might be a way of signaling to your subconscious, because that you want to be more involved in your dreams,
Mhm.
at a level. Because I think that if you don't pay much attention to it, then it's that much harder to become lucid when you're dreaming, if you see what I mean.
No,
I think
definitely.
you have to have I think for your subconscious to understand that this is a possibility that you want to explore, you have to become interested from the
Mhm.
conscious. So you have to have that intention of wanting to become more involved. Um, I think that might be the case.
Yes, it'd be
Somebody
like going to
spontaneous.
Japan. yeah, going to Japan again, and then you stay in your hotel and you order food from the menu in English, and you show no interest whatsoever in any of the things that has to do with the culture. You know, you don't visit any of the places, and you're essentially just locked in your room by yourself. So I don't think that anybody would want to engage with you, you know, if you were doing that. To be like, whatever, they have no care, you know. So dream journaling is essentially um, visiting the locations, you know, and showing an interest in the culture. And um, the, you know, the unconscious is paying attention all the time. And it says, oh, Lee is, you know, putting a little effort in here and actually wants to communicate through this means. Maybe maybe this is a way to actually speak to them. The truth of the matter is that anything we do in reality, waking reality, is the unconscious communicating to us. We're projecting into the world meaning, and it projects back to us. It's like a mirror in all things. So you can learn that way, but but dreams are an interesting mode of communication because it's so different than waking reality. It kind of shuts down the barrier of the impossibility, you know, and says anything is possible. You know, anything is image. Let's see what happens here. So it's definitely in the world of the unconscious versus our world in a sense. And so yeah, I mean, dream journaling, I put in my book essentially like methods to get to lucid dream, and dream journaling is primarily number one because, and also asking yourself really deep questions, essentially like, what is consciousness? Why would I want to do this thing? You know, getting to the core of those things really sets foundation up of why you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it. And then dream journaling and reality checks and things like that, methods that you can use, basic methods, essentially bring back awareness. You know, if you're sitting there writing in a journal, you're also paying attention, you're putting effort into writing, you know, and being aware and being here now, present, you know, and reality checks are the same way, essentially walking around and asking yourself, am I dreaming? Am I awake? You're bringing some type of level of awareness that you typically don't have. Meditation obviously is it helps with dreaming, and why? Because you're bringing awareness to the situation. You're paying attention to the moment. You're engaging with the unconscious, saying, "I'm interested. Let's have a conversation." So definitely.
I think it's true to say that anything that we do which engages the emotional and imagination part of the brain is going to lead us in that direction, because there are certainly going to be overlaps when we're talking about meditation and using visualization and etc. It's we're using the subconscious part of the brain when we're doing all of that, and so then when we're much more likely when we're asleep and we start dreaming to actually start becoming aware
Hmm.
within, and it's quite an interesting experience
Yeah.
in itself.
Yeah. I would say, you know, nobody really, even today, you know, nobody really knows how any of this works. They just know it does. So, um, you know, sometimes, uh, you know, no one can explain to you why um, bringing awareness really makes the world open up to you, but it does. They don't understand how reality works, but when you do these things, it starts opening up. You know, it starts talking to you, communicating. So, and it's not an end. Like once you get to lucid dreaming, that's not it. You know, that's just a mode of communication that you haven't done anything, you know. You've opened up dialogue. Now you can actually start communicating if you choose to. um, so a lot of people kind of end there. They say, well, I've had these dream experiences and I know what lucid dreaming is and I'm done, you know. Essentially I'm the master of my domain, you know. And what they don't realize is that the more you engage with it, the more it opens up, and there's an infinite amount of that. So you know, like I've kind of grown towards like astrology and stuff like that recently because of understanding the mechanisms behind it for myself. And it's definitely linked to dream experiences uh, and those things. So um, it opened that up for me when that was locked before. So it kind of unlocks us to seeing it. Dreams are just one modality of it. People have music, they have gardening, and so on. My wife likes to garden, and she finds such meaning in her gardening. And when I don't, I'm like, I don't see it. But oddly enough, through my dream experiences and really going down that road, I start seeing reality in a different way, and the beauty in gardening and things like that. So it opens me up my own way. Everyone has their own way of opening up, and that's just what called to me.
Well, I think a wonderful way to start on this journey would be your book. And just to remind everyone, it's a visionary guide to lucid dreaming. And my guest is Lee Adams. I will be putting a link to that on the description box. And if people want to get hold of you, how do they do that?
They can go to my website at taileaters.com, or they can type in luciddreambook.com and it'll take them to the same site. And there's a Facebook page. They can engage with other lucid dreamers there. We have a Discord. They can chat in real time with people there. I'm on Discord, and I'm also on the Facebook page, and they can contact me through email as well, through my website if they want. And I'm very open to talk to people about their dreams, their nightmares. I really like nightmares because they're exciting, terrifying. They really challenge us. And so if people are having horrific nightmares and want to get some help for that, I'd be glad to talk to them about it. Um, and yeah, if anybody ever just wants to chat, I'm more than open.
Thank you very much, Lee, for us on In the Light today.
Yeah.
And once again, all the information will be on the description box, along with how to contact me and how to and some talks that I'm giving as well. I'm planning on one later this week called Love Is. So for more information about that, you can always get in touch with me. And next time, I will be speaking about emotional repatterning with Lisa Samet. Until then, goodbye.